Hi, I'm Ashley from Melbourne City Science. Like most Melburnians, I'm spending a lot of time inside right now. And even though that's a great thing, I can't help but stare out the window quite a bit and dream about the outside world. What it would be like in summer to pop down to the Yarra River and take a swim. But is the Yarra River actually clean? Clean enough to take a swim in? Most Melburnians have seen the Yarra River in one form or another, whether it's out near the mountains or in the CBD, and I think we would have different opinions about whether or not it looks clean. But how do we actually know a river is clean? So let's go find out. So we've travelled up the Yarra River to Warburton. We're going to answer this question about water quality by testing some water here and down closer to Melbourne in Dights Falls. To do this, we're going to employ an expert to help us along the way. Come along, Jess.
Hi Ash, thanks for having me along. Hi everyone, my name is Jess and I'm with PrimeSci, the Healthy Rivers, Healthy Bay team.
Thank you for coming along, Jess. So you're going to help us with our two-part episode testing water up in here versus down near Melbourne. So what are we going to be looking at to test whether or not water is healthy?
Well, there's two things we're going to be looking at today, Ash. We're going to take a test of the actual water flowing through here on the Yarra in Warburton, and then we'll also collect some of the creatures that live in this water. So we're going to have a look at the macroinvertebrates.
For all those at home that don't know, what is a macroinvertebrate?
Great question. Macroinvertebrate basically means creatures without a backbone, and macro means that we can see them with our eyes. So we don't need a special microscope with us today. We're just basically looking for the things that we can see swimming around or moving in the water. We also call macroinvertebrates water bugs, so that's another common name.
Beautiful, so I might call them water bugs from now on then. So we're also going to be testing Warburton and Dights Falls. We're going to be comparing two locations. What's the benefit of water testing in multiple locations?
Well, we know that the water doesn't always stay the same along a whole creek or river. Just sampling up here at Warburton doesn't give you the overview of how healthy the whole Yarra is. The Yarra is 242 kilometres. It's got lots of different creeks and rivers entering into it. So just sampling here is not enough. Having different points along the Yarra helps us to build a really good picture of how healthy the whole Yarra is. Is there things that need to be addressed? Is there pollution events? How do the bugs change as we travel? Those water bugs change as we travel down into Dights Falls.
Okay, so that means we're going to see some variation in our results. What is your suspicion of what the results are going to be in Warburton versus Dights Falls?
Well, here at Warburton, we can already see there's a lot more forests around, there's less housing, we are close to these forest ranges in the background. I suspect that we're going to find that the water quality and the macro life here or the water bug life is much better than what we find in at Dights Falls. As we head towards the city, we've got a lot of urbanisation, lots of houses and roads being built. There's lots of factories, there's lots of stormwater drains, and all of those things we know affect the water quality and health of the Yarra.
Excellent. Well, why don't we start water testing and have a look? All right. Jess has got her gumboots on, we've got our masks off, and we found a lovely place to sample. So let's get started. So I've noticed the river is quite brown. Does that mean it is dirty?
We can see that the river is really brown, as you've noticed, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily polluted. It could be things like the sediment that is causing it, but it can be other things called tannins. Now, tannins, I think if you think of it the way, if you had a cup of hot water and you dip your tea bag into that cup, it goes brown. But does it mean that it's polluted and dirty? No. It's still quite safe and clean.
So it seems that river health can be a bit deceiving. So let's just jump into the testing. What are we going to do first?
Well, how about we start off doing the water quality testing first?
Excellent. So this is quite an impressive set you've got. What sort of tests are you going to be doing on this water?
We're going to have a look at the things like pH, EC, electrical conductivity, phosphorus, temperature, and turbidity using one of these special tubes. Yes, the water's a little bit higher at the moment, but I'll easily be able to take water samples from the edge here, and I'll also be able to use my net to move back and forth to collect those water bugs. Have you ever seen one of these before?
No.
So this tube here at the bottom, it's got like a black and white disc. We gently just keep adding the water that we've just collected in, and you do it until you basically can't see that black and white disc anymore.
And what does that tell us?
That tells us how much sediment's floating through the water. So before you were saying that the water looked really dirty, and we were talking about it could be things like runoff, so sediment, or it could be like the tannins. We try to have a look to see how much suspended dirt is in the water. Okay, it's still looking quite good. Right.
Seems pretty full. Is that a good response?
That is a really good response. So that's telling me that there isn't a lot of suspended solids.
So these results indicate potentially a healthy river?
It can be a really good indicator because we know less sediment in a waterway is really beneficial. We know that in waters that has got heavy amounts of sediment, it means that there can be less oxygen and the temperatures are a lot warmer than creeks or rivers that have less turbidity.
Oh, and we've gotten a lot of information already. What's the next test?
Let's do pH. I've got my little pH card and it goes from 0 up to 14. So we know if water's acidic, that's not good for the waterway health, just like if it becomes too alkaline, and it can affect the way animals breathe, reproduce in the waterways and how they survive. And I'm going to let you hold on to it while I put the little dipstick into the water. And then we need to let it develop, and then we can work out if it's in a good range.
Let's
see if you can work that one out.
All right, so we're looking for a good balance, and that's indicated by the colors on our pH stick. So it's looking like it's a solid 7. And if I remember my high school pH lessons correctly, a 7 is pretty awesome. Is that correct?
Yes, that is an excellent result. So that's a 6 or 7, excellent result to see here. So what I'm doing is I am looking at the phosphate levels here. Now, phosphate can enter into the waterways in numerous ways, from stormwater drains to farm runoff to people washing cars out on the road. So I've popped the little tablet in there. And what we're looking for is a blue colour change. So the stronger the blue colour change means the more phosphate that is present in the Yarra.
Set up.
You can have a go.
Well, I hope this tests quicker than the last one because my arm's getting a bit sore. All right, so what are we doing now, Jess?
I've got a thermometer.
So we're taking the water's temperature.
Exactly.
What is a good temperature for water?
Well, we know that we're in winter, so I expect it to be quite cool. And the creatures are adapted up here with this cool change in the waterway. If you were in the middle of winter and you had like 30 degrees and it was really weird for Melbourne, then you'd be really worried. But I think it's going to be nice and light. Okay, and our last final test is looking at the electrical conductivity. So we're looking at how much salt is in the water here in the Yarra. So I have my EC reader, and I can switch it on, and then I can pop it down into our little beaker and see what's actually going on.
The idea of taking electrical pulses from water seems a little strange to me. What does that indicate to you?
We're interested in salinity in water because we know that salinity can have a detrimental effect. So it can affect the health of the waterways and affect the animals that live here. So the lower the EC rating, the better. But especially if we've seen heavy rain, we can see that salinity increase. We've got some really good results in. The temperature's sitting at around 10 degrees today.
So nice and chilly for winter water?
Nice and chilly for winter water, what I expect to see up here at this time of year. Our EC reading is reading around 190 microsiemens. So that's in the very good range. So it's not excellent, but it's still very good. And then the last one that we've got to do is the one that you're holding, that phosphate.
So didn't you say there's supposed to be a blue reaction?
There's supposed to be a blue reaction. So the more phosphate that's present in the water, the darker the blue that it turns. So you need this little card. Pop your little tube on the white square with the black outline and look through over the top, and then see if you've got any of the matches of the blue colour.
Maybe between the top 2 squares? I'll hand it over to the expert to check.
Okay, now that I'm having a look through the top, because it looks really clear when you look at this way. Now when I look at the top, That's what we call our zero phosphate reading. So it's quite rare. Sometimes we always get a little bit of phosphate, but it's showing no phosphate today. Sometimes that can be because of the heavy rainfall. So the phosphate that was here might have been diluted. At this point in time on this day, it's a really good result.
Excellent. All right, so we've done all of our chemical tests and we've had some really amazing results. Next, let's get to those macroinvertebrates you were talking about.
Oh, your favourites, the water bugs.
Yes.
Now I'm going to start downstream and work the way up because that'll help me to get a nice cleaner sample. You start to dig up around upstream, and if you disturb any of the dirt or sediment, it then washes downstream. It can make your sample really dirty, and it can also warn the creatures that something's going on, and I don't want them to all disappear and hide. I'm so excited, we've got a stonefly. Okay, we need to let that sample settle for a few minutes because the creatures have been given a bit of a fright. So by letting it settle out, we'll start to see them moving and we'll be able to start identifying what we've caught. There's that as a caddis. And then I can get all that junk out.
Okay, so Jess and I kind of helped. We've isolated some water bugs, or those macroinvertebrates, and Jess has her guidebook and also just wealth of knowledge as an expert, and is going to identify some of the bugs we've got and talk about why they're important to indicate water health.
So when we record all these animals, we mark them down and they've all been given a different score, like a different number. And that just helps to identify those that are really sensitive. And we've found 3 of those in the very sensitive range. So we've got a mayfly, we've got a stonefly, and we've found those caddisfly larvae. So they're all high scoring, they're super sensitive to any pollution. And then we've got some creatures that are a little bit more tolerant. So we've got things like this water boatman down here, and a shrimp in here. Things that we found in under a couple of minutes.
Some awesome water bugs that are very sensitive, which means they can only live in healthy water. And we also have some other sorts of water bugs. So is this what you expect to see in this sort of area?
It certainly is. Now, in a good, healthy waterway, you're going to find very sensitive species right down to the very tolerant. This is all part of that biodiversity that we expect to see. We want to see lots of different species, but as you move down the waterway and as we see more pollution entering into the Yarra River, those sensitive ones die off. It's only the tolerant to really tolerant species that can survive that water pollution.
I found that water testing and the water bugs fascinating. Thank you so much for that, Jess. So now with all of our tests, I have a sneaking suspicion I know the answer to this question, but do you think the water here is healthy?
On this day at this time, we got really good results today. We had great biodiversity of those water bugs. We had some really good results in the water quality. So it's looking really good today.
And you mentioned that on this day at this time, I'm imagining that's an important clarification because of water constantly moving.
It certainly is, and because we have rain occurring and different things happening along here in the Yarra, so just doing one test at one time doesn't mean that the Yarra is going to be healthy for the whole of the year. It means we still need to do other tests and record these throughout the year to really see, you know, the ups and downs. Gives you a better picture of the overall health of the Yarra.
Thank you so much, Jess, and we'll see you at Dights Falls.
Excellent, I'll see you there.
Who knew water river health was so complicated? Whether or not a river is clean became a lot more complicated than I thought, and it became a question of river health entirely. Thanks again to our expert for taking us through those fascinating chemical tests and showing us those awesome water bugs. So that was Warburton, but I wonder how those tests would go closer to the CBD. Join me next time in our series, The Science Behind the Yarra, to find out which is cleaner, Warburton versus Dights Falls. See you then.